How do you build a compliant digital asset offering? How do you serve millions of customers without breaking everything?
I think we're still in the very early days of tokenization. That's clear. Well, the decision wasn't necessarily taken by Incore at the time. It was driven by customer demand.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Infinity, a brand new season of our interview season. I'm Andy Flury, founder of Wyden. In this show, we sit down with the people shaping the future of institutional digital assets. The builders, the operators, the decision makers inside the banks, fintechs, infrastructure providers who are making this new and exciting ecosystem real. Institutional adoption of digital assets isn't a question of if anymore, it's a question of how. How do you build a compliant digital asset offering? How do you integrate with legacy systems? How do you serve millions of customers without breaking everything? That's what this show is about. If you find value in these conversations, please hit subscribe below. If you have any questions about digital asset infrastructure, about what we should cover, about the guests you'd like to see, please drop them in the comments below. Now, let's get into it. As many of you know, not every bank builds everything in-house. In fact, many regional banks, cantonal banks, and private banks outsource a considerable part of their services. Why reinvent when you can plug into a specialist infrastructure that's already battle tested? That's exactly where transactional banks come in. They are the behind the scenes operator that handle the heavy lifting, payments, settlement, custody, securities processing, and so forth. They let other financial institutions focus on what they do best, serving their clients, without having to build and maintain every piece of the puzzle internally. And now the model is expanding into digital assets. Incore Bank is one of these powerhouses. As a Swiss B2B transaction bank, Incore doesn't serve retail customers, they serve banks to offer crypto and tokenized assets, trading, custody, staking, settlement, without having to rebuild their technology stack from scratch. Incore moved very early. They've onboarded institutions like Erste Bank, and today 10 banks run on their platform, trading digital assets around the clock. So, what does adoption look like from the inside? Pascal Wyser knows all about this. As a B2B sales manager for digital assets at Incore, he works directly with the institutions making this leap. Pascal, welcome to the show. Let's start with you. Who are you and what do you actually do at Incore?
Hi, Andy. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Pascal, and I'm a senior sales manager and the business lead for digital assets at Incore Bank. Maybe to my background briefly, I have more than 22 years of experience with financial institutions, primarily with Swiss regulated banks, where I've been responsible for managing both private customers but also institutional clients on the wealth management side. And since 2016, I've also been involved with digital assets with various institutions in Liechtenstein and in Switzerland. And I'm just responsible for finding new customers within the digital asset division within Incore, but also in enabling other banks, for them to offer solutions to their customers.
All right. Thank you. Great to have you. Now, let's set the stage. Incore calls itself a transaction bank, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly a term everybody is familiar with, but it should. Please, can you break down what Incore actually does, who you serve, and why this model matters? What does a transaction bank mean in practice? Walk us through how a typical day looks like at Incore.
So Incore Bank, what we focus is providing banking services to other institutional customers. And these are banks, asset managers, and other financial intermediaries. The main services that we offer is custody and clearing services. So we're responsible for safekeeping and the settlement of financial assets. On top of that, we also offer it for digital assets. So this is a service that we started back in 2020 for our customers. Additionally, we do trading execution. So we are responsible for the efficient execution of equities, fixed income, FX, and as mentioned, digital assets. Essentially, so how Inco started, and it was back in 2007, was running the back office for other banks. And this started all over with Merki Baumann back in 2007. But as a transaction bank, I know it's a term that you hear every now and then, but it's actually reflecting the focus on providing efficient and secure transaction services to our customers. And this predominantly includes a high volume of transactions. So ensuring smooth processing in compliance, obviously, with all Swiss regulation. And on top of that, we also provide innovative and API-driven tech solutions to automate transactions as much as we can.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it makes total sense. It's an economies of scale if you can build it once and then run it for multiple of your client banks. Yeah. Now, Incore didn't exactly wait for digital assets to become mainstream. You jumped in very early, even for Swiss standards. Take us back to that decision, if you can. Why digital assets? What was the thesis back then? What made you think, okay, we're on to something. This is something we should be looking into?
Well, the decision wasn't necessarily taken by Incore at the time. It was driven by customer demand. And this was particularly back in 2019 when we got more and more inquiries from one of our serving banks, that's Merki Baumann, a well-known Swiss private bank. And we then discussed potential solutions together with the team at Merki Baumann and also involved FINMA and the law firms very early on in the process in order not to breach any law, as we were pretty much one of the first banks to, together with two other banks in Switzerland, that driving this new digital asset solutions. And again, after we offered the services, there was many more banks that jumped on this opportunity as well. However, we just did what we can do best: discuss it with customers, listen to customers, and then build services on behalf of them.
Yeah, so you were kind of had on one hand the first mover advantage, but you also had to pave the way for other banks following after you. Now, I can imagine running a digital asset platform for banks, so banks, not retail customers, is quite a different beast. Regulation, custody, settlement, operational risk. The list probably goes on forever. What have been the toughest problems you guys had to solve, and how did you eventually solve it?
Well, that's a very good question. Offering a new service to existing banks is always a challenge for us. So we need to battle test everything before we roll it out to our customers. And in this particular case, offering digital assets even pose additional challenges. As you know, you have a string of characters, so kind of like a private key that needs to be kept safe, because only if you have the private key, you can access your digital assets. And this was one of the toughest operational challenges initially, how to ensure that this private key is kept safe within the banking environment. And I think what happened, and realized very early on in the process, that there is very good solutions out in the market already. So we teamed up with some of them, particularly delivering us the HSMs, and also already delivering us or providing us with the setup of the already existing HSMs that they've built or that they've set up. This was certainly one of the key challenges. And then obviously convincing your customers and telling them that keys financial assets within Incore are sound and safe. But also on the regulatory side, it was a new kid on the block, if you would like to say that, or new asset class, if still very much evolving, but interest showed by the banks wanting to offer this new asset class to its customers. So we had very early on as well in the process discussions with FINMA, how we can best set this up, which processes need to be in place and which potential risk need to be mitigated. On this side, also a few law companies based in Switzerland helped us to set this up properly.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're working with partners, with vendors. You obviously used a custody vendor to implement the HSM part, and essentially it worked with those partners to bridge the gap. Full disclosure, Incore has been a Wyden client since 2022, using our platform the day-to-day for order processing execution. Of course, I have to ask, how is it going? What value has the partnership actually delivered for your banking clients? Any surprises, good or bad, in how the collaboration has been evolving so far?
No, we are very happy with this decision in working with you guys. That's certainly been one of the best decisions that we've made, not only building everything in-house, but also partner with partners such as Wyden. I think the benefits that we see is clearly that Wyden, for example, manages the counterparties. We don't necessarily have the time to look at each and every counterparty. So we ensure that you do that for us. We rely on you, and that you also build the right connectivity to these counterparties. So for us, it's just a plug in, and we have direct connectivity to such counterparties. But also in terms of scalability, for us as a fully regulated bank, it takes time to vet all these counterparties, to do all the due diligence and so on and so forth. And therefore, this partnership enables us to scale much, much quicker than we would be able to do it ourselves. But also in terms of transparency and auditability, I think this is a crucial point that many people underestimate. It's our counterparties are fully regulated banks, so they want to know and they want to see which prices are coming from where. So also in terms of best execution, and this is certainly something where you supported us as well, and also the centralized order book. So 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we had open orders on various exchanges. There was no centralized order book. But now with Wyden, we know exactly which trades are open.
Yeah, it's a very important aspect that many financial institutions underestimate. You cannot trade just one or two trading venues. We recommend 3, 5, 10, or even more, and then handling that many, or even in the first place, selecting that many counterparties and onboarding them is one issue. But then operationally, to have a stable connection, have someone taking care of all the API updates is quite a burden. So very happy to hear that. Now let's shift gears a little bit here. Incore offers the full menu. You do brokerage, you do custody, settlement, transfers. But you also do staking for various assets. Here, what I'm curious to hear is, do banks actually care about staking today? Is there real client demand in Switzerland or outside? Or is it more of a nice to have on the product sheet?
It's a very good question, Andy. Whenever you talk about traditional assets, you have dividends and you have coupons. So not only assets laying bare in the account or in the custody account, but also generating a certain amount of yield. Now, in terms of digital assets, this is rather complicated. We have proof of work and we have proof of stake. And the biggest protocol is proof of work, which is Bitcoin. So you can't stake Bitcoin. The next one that you can stake is Ethereum or the Ether on the Ethereum blockchain. And we have had demand for customers to offer yield, yes. So that was also the reason why we implemented staking in the first place. Nevertheless, 80% plus, so let's say 85% of the holdings that we have on behalf of our customers are in Bitcoin. So there is no yield on these ones. Then you have potentially another 10%, which are in ETH, which is the second biggest currency on the market cap at the moment. And there you can stake this ETH, but currently generating around a 2.5% yield, which is not very high. So on the assets that we have, only around 10-15% can be staked with low yields. So this is what we offer. And we had to do it because of client demand. But is it really a game changer? No, it's not, because I think the solution here is, or the challenge on hand is how to generate yield on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, one advantage of offering staking as a bank is that you generate the steady stream of the revenue to potentially offset some of the custody or deposit fees, which I think is quite an attractive offering for customers. But yes, of course, if the majority of assets are in Bitcoin, then you don't have that opportunity. Now, we talk about staking, of course. Then the other question is tokenization. Tokenization is on everyone's lips. We hear a lot about it on conferences, in presentations, in innovation teams at banks are talking about it. Where does Incore fit into this story? Which asset classes, from your view, are generating more serious interest, and are clients seeing real benefits yet, or are we still in the early days of tokenization?
And we don't have significant demand from our existing customers. Nevertheless, we've been involved in tokenizing assets. Again, on this side, we've partnered with various tokenization engines. So we don't tokenize ourselves. We have partners tokenizing the assets. What we do is, again, the general banking services, the custody and the trading of such assets. Now, there is growing demand on tokenized money market funds. To give you an example, the key benefits there can be a 24/7 access to your treasury or to your assets. And also it can generate a yield on pretty much an hourly basis, because this is ongoing. You get a yield on these assets. Another project that we have been involved so far is the tokenization of real estate. Nevertheless, this is very, very early days. And again, as mentioned, the customers that we have are predominantly investment customers. So they want to invest in tokens and not necessarily seeing the benefits on efficiency, on transferring funds, for example.
So money market funds and real estate. Personally, I feel it's great that a bank like Incore is engaged in tokenization. That the big problem with tokenized assets has been that there is no markets, no secondary markets, or there hasn't been any secondary markets. Now that is changing. Incore is also partnering with BX Swiss, that has recently received a license and is going to launch tokenized assets. I'm very curious how that is going to work out, and how well that is going to be received from the market. So, great that you're also engaged in this project. Now, let's look a little bit ahead over the next 12 to 24 months. What's on the priority list for Incore? Where are you placing your bets in a market that's changing so fast at the moment?
There's probably three areas that we try to focus on. Is the product development. So continuing to listen to our customers and to their requirements. what do they need in future to be even more successful with digital assets, and also listening to market trends. What's going to be the next big thing? And one of the questions that we try to solve is, how do we generate yield on Bitcoin, as we discussed earlier in this podcast? Because I think this is one of the biggest challenges that the market looks at. Obviously, as a second point, we'd love to onboard new banks. We have enough flow. We have the rails, to offer these services to other banks. And I think Switzerland in particular, we will see a few more banks in Switzerland popping up this year in offering digital assets, which is great. And then also as a third point is further automating certain processes. And this will then allow us to scale our service more effectively, particularly as digital assets really becomes an increasingly common means of investment, or even also a means of payment, because it's much faster to transfer from A to B and cross-border.
A few banks and financial institutions out there who haven't pulled the trigger yet when it comes to digital assets. If they're evaluating B2B partners like Incore, what should they be looking for? What are the sort of questions they should be asking, and maybe more importantly, what are potential red flags to watch out for?
Well, I think particularly when selecting a digital asset service provider, regulation is key. So nowadays you have fully regulated counterparties, particularly here in Switzerland, banks that can offer you the whole set of services. It's important to work with trusted and regulated partners as well in terms of security and compliance. I think this is more and more coming into place, because the regulator is very worried that there is lots of not clean transactions being transferred through digital assets. But look at the counterparty. Is it regulated? What's the experience of this counterparty? How long have they been offering digital asset services? And also look at the team. So who is behind the scenes? Who is really playing the music behind the scenes? And maybe lastly, is always good to have some client references. And we are very happy to have these references. We have these references since June 2020, where customers can provide a good feedback on the services that we have been offering to them.
Yep. Yeah. So you have to do your homework. Definitely, as with every new venture, essentially this is new business, new grounds for every bank. So when doing these selections, these vendor selections, you have to take things very seriously. Pascal, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciated your insights. Learned a lot today. That's already it for this episode of Beyond Infinity. If you found this conversation valuable, again, please hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you have questions, thoughts, or guests you'd like us to feature, drop them in the comments below. I'm Andy Flury. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you very much for having me.